When you think of Falcom, the first thing most of you will probably be thinking is flawless game balancing. Clearly, these guys are masters at recognizing every single way players could abuse their own game mechanics, and limiting it before it gets out of hand, making for a very fun, balanced gameplay experience for the entire family. No balanced Grubhub breakfast would be complete without the Tauros Master Quartz, Cold Steel 1 delay crafts, evasion tanking, Serious Master Quartz, Burning Heart, Earth Wall, Domination, and many more. Trust me, wiping out half of a late game boss's health in one attack was purely intentional. So make sure you kiss your Toshihiro Kondo body pillow every night before going to bed, and thank him for good game balancing. All joking aside, Trails into Reverie is a very silly game when it comes to game balancing. Admittedly, funny broken shit is not all that new for the series, as there's been some unchecked things since the very first Sky game. So what ends up being broken varies from game to game. Sometimes it's delaying enemies indefinitely, other times it's becoming literally impossible to hit by any normal attack. Once one thing gets nerfed in a subsequent entry, another strategy rises from the ashes to take over. This unchecked balance has gotten even more out of hand when you enter the Cold Steel series, as the combat has by far the largest amount of options, and thus there's many more ways you can create busted builds. Reverie, essentially being the final game in the Cold Steel saga, is where this power scaling is at its peak. Now, it's almost ironic, as I would consider Reverie to have some of the most difficult challenges in the entire Cold Steel arc. This is largely due to the game having a post-game and some crazy souped-up enemies and bosses, as a way to sort of counteract the insane tools you are given. In a way, it almost feels like you are meant to be broken to break even with some of these late-game bosses, and it's kinda wonderful. If I were to go over every possible way you could be broken in Reverie, we would be here all day. Basically, any playable character can be amazing with the right tools, and why shouldn't they? What would the fun of this celebration of the series be if your favorite character teased you by being playable and were complete dog shit? But I've rambled on enough. You've clicked on the video, you know exactly who you came for. Rixy Mixy, Rishi Mishi, more commonly known as Risha Mao, is one of the earliest characters you get in the game, so you have ample opportunity to use her. She is also the best character in the series, and not strictly for a gameplay reason, but a reason of the heart. What a silly critter. But it also doesn't hurt that she seems to have some of the highest DPS in Reverie. So let us start out our university class for Kiseki builds and game mechanics, and learn how you can make your very own creature busted. And because this comes up with relation to a lot of Trails videos, I will let you know now that there will not be any specific plot-related spoilers contained in this video, or shown in any of the footage unless you already know it. So unless you count seeing the designs of some of the bosses and some of the content contained in the Reverie corridor, which isn't really plot relevant anyway, this video will be spoiler-free. Now, admittedly, as if Reverie couldn't get cracked enough, there are multiple ways you can build just Rixia to do crazy damage. You could always use Tauros, the less busted, modified Tauros Quartz from Cold Steel 2, when Falcom realized 150% free bonus damage per attack was fucking ridiculous. So now it's been nerfed to 100% damage at max level with this new Quartz. The problem, though, is that Tauros, just like Tauros, has the trade-off where you must wait longer between each attack, so it's only really optimal for damage nuking when your character will be getting less turns. And with Risha's great speed, nerfing that aspect on her seems like a waste, when Aurelia or Laura can physical nuke better anyways. Another build I considered looking into much later on was Chevalier, which gives the highest attack boost of any single Master Quartz effect, capping out at 175% bonus damage damage at max level. The problem is that your HP must be extremely low to hit this damage cap. This is helped by one of the quartz's additional effects, which revives a character holding it with 1% HP and around 100 CP depending on the level, putting you safely in the range of the maximum damage effect. But even with that, getting an enemy to target Rixia to knock her down to that low can be a pain, and there's no real supplementary quartz with the same effect to stack on top of this. You could use this with a different attack boosting quartz as her sub quartz and get some good damage, but the downsides remain even if this could work with the right setup. The risk is also at an all-time high with a strategy like this, as any hit will likely kill her in this low health state, which will take away all the CP she can use for crafts and cancel any buffs you apply to her. You could do the 100% evasion strat I mentioned earlier to mitigate this, but doing that would only make getting hit in the first place to proc the effect extremely difficult in return. So there would actually be a lot of calculations, setups, and risk if you wanted to go with a build like this. And when we could reliably just spam attacks and see big numbers, that won't be necessary. And that's why it's always worth sticking with old reliable. Murakumo as the main master quartz and Gungnir as the sub master quartz. Now the gameplay footage you'll be seeing throughout this video is all in the post game, mainly because I only decided to make this video on a whim after I finished the main story, and thus never recorded anything before. But with that said, note that this build could start as soon as Act 3, just with less beefy standard quartz as you'll get in the post game, and lower levels. The main ingredient we'll be waiting on is Crow Armbrust, since he is the one carrying the Gungnir Master Quartz, and he'll be joining the Reverie corridor in Act 3 when we can equip it as a sub-quartz on Rixia. Murakumo comes with Rixy right out of the box, so no waiting is required there. You could also choose to swap out Gungnir with Kusanagi when you get that Master Quartz a bit later, as they both share the same effect. They just have slightly different stat bonuses and different arts. You could get a bit more strength out of Kusanagi if you use that, but I do like getting a free chrono burst with Gungnir for some situations, so it's really up to personal preference, as performance shouldn't be all that different between the two. But what do these quartz actually do? Well, both Gungnir and Kusanagi, though I will strictly refer to Gungnir from now on for simplicity's sake, boosts critical hit damage by a certain amount depending on the quartz's level. This value starts at 75% bonus crit damage at level 5 to a chunky 120% bonus crit damage at level 15. Nice. Murakumo is a bit interesting for a master quartz as its main effect isn't quite so useful on its own, where it has a chance to inflict enemies with a random status ailment, going from a 36% chance at level 5 to a 50% chance at level 15. This sounds pretty good, but with how many of this game's toughest foes can just resist almost any ailment in the game, a lot of your hits aren't really going to be doing much with this. It's got its niche for sure and can be a nice bonus when it does occur, but it won't really be carrying the build on its own. The sub-effects for setting this as your main master quartz are what we're really after. An evasion rate boost making her harder to hit, and of course, immediate stealth. Which brings us to the glue that holds this whole strategy together.
Moonlight butterflies.
Stealth is a very weird mechanic throughout the Trails games. This effect was technically a thing back in the Crossbell games, and could be granted to your party via a low-level mirage art, or a technique used by specific enemies in crafts. That said, it wasn't very useful in these games. Enemies using it often just served to prolong the fight, as you had to wait for it to wear off before even being able to attack them. Using it yourself was really just a defensive maneuver to protect a specific character for a couple turns. However, as of the Cold Steel games, stealth is a lot more restricted in its use, as it's mainly applied via self-buffing crafts only available to certain characters, meaning only characters such as Altina, Joshua, Fee, and Rixia can effectively use it. Well, why would we want to use stealth for a supposed high damage character if it just serves as a way to avoid getting hit? Well, I sort of glanced over one very small, minute detail about this mechanic. Every single physical attack dealt to an enemy while in stealth is a critical hit. And if you remember Gungnir's main effect, that critical attack damage more than doubles its usual damage multiplier once you get the quartz to a high enough level. And with this crit being guaranteed whenever you're in stealth, you don't have to have a single point into Rixia's critical rate to score guaranteed critical hits, meaning that any accessory or quartz you would normally use to boost the critical rate on other characters that use it can all go into damage boosting equipment when you don't have to worry about RNG determining whether or not you'll be getting the big damage boost next turn. The synergy doesn't stop there, however, as not only does Murakumo start Rixia off with 3 turns of free stealth at max level, but the Master Quartz also provides Saintly Force as an art, which can be used to grant the max attack buff on any character in one cast. You can also pair this with the Domination Quartz like I did for double damage on the first hit, and absolutely wipe the floor with enemies in a single attack. Where buffing this way as opposed to using one of her crafts can let you pull off her first hit with a fully charged S-craft and max attack buff, which is just as insane as it sounds. Or you can hit smaller enemies with Dragon Claws for 2 crits that tends to kill them too. Her stealth craft, Moonlight Butterflies, is also quite busted for this, as it also applies the max buffs to her attack and speed, on top of renewing stealth for another 3 turns. So you essentially have a character that can rarely be targeted so long as she's covered by stealth, and is always dealing over double the normal damage, on top of the already strong critical damage multiplier, and can be built with as much speed and attack-raising quartz and accessories as necessary to deal repeated nuke damage to anything in her path. Damn, girl, that's kinda crazy, I'm not gonna lie. The only real hole in this seemingly impenetrable strategy is the fact that using any of her crafts outside of Moonlight Butterflies puts her at risk of not having enough CP to use Moonlight Butterflies again immediately after it wears off, and having to endure a turn or two where she's vulnerable and can be targeted. But luckily she has a pretty solid evasion rate even without extra equipment for her to be able to dodge fairly well. And if the player is a dumb fuck like me, I promise crazy shit will still happen if I play stupid and risky as usual. For the rest of the video, I will briefly be going over my journey in the Reverie corridor for the post-game using Rixia with this build, because trust me, she legit never left my main party, but I'll be highlighting a few interesting moments, fights, and even some awesome Family Guy cutaway gags that happened here, so I hope you enjoy the epic Machinima-inspired trick shot compilation. And also feel free to forget these other random jobbers that appear in my team, as they really don't do much. So this journey will start about halfway through the 4th stratum of the Reverie corridor, right after where the game would stop us until we complete the game's main story. Yet even in this infantile state before Rixi released her true beast inside, she's already got a pretty cracked setup, a Passionate Rouge equipped for a nice strength boost, and a True Awakening headband for bonus critical rate and evasion, though I am very well aware the second accessory is not optimal, as I previously explained. The main ingredient to her quartz setup at this point, outside of the 2 master quartz, are Domination to double the damage of her first attack in the battle, and the Carnelia gem for the biggest raw damage boost of plus 200 at this point in the build. The rest of the quartz were mostly selected for being super rare and boosting strength significantly on top of their main effects, alongside Kyokatsu for a big speed boost. The critical attack from Dragon Claws at this point with no buffs does just over 16k damage, which is pretty good all things considered, though not entirely nuclear, though this is her weakest damaging craft. Compare this to the just under 6k she does with the same attack in no crit, and you can see the difference the crit makes in her damage output. Also realize all the gameplay I recorded for this video just randomly starts here mid-fight with a ton of effects and enemy enemy attacks charging up, as I know we were all wondering how they made it out of this situation. I sure wonder. After a few battles on this first floor, I decided to take Randy's dazzling Carnelia gem and trade him fucking slop to further boost Rixia's strength stat by another 200, giving her over 3,800 strength at the end of this non-scuffed transaction. The first major hurdle on this stratum is killing a giant mammoth, which isn't necessarily as difficult as it is just very tanky for my team at this point. I basically have a good 2 to 3 damage dealers on the field at all times while swapping out, yet it still takes me a good 10 minutes to kill him. That said, it's a bit more of a trial run if anything, so I don't mind if not just a test to see what my team can do, as relevant as that is considering I swap everyone out constantly for different floors. I try to rotate my party and continue to interrupt him in a way to where he gets very few opportunities to attack himself, since his attacks would hit pretty hard. Fights with high health pools like this also show off Risha's potential for support, as giving her Crescent Mirror with her speed can be a godsend, and a nice buffer for anything dangerous a boss may cast that's considered an art attack, which would absolutely be essential in some of the fights later. I even get a nice moment to use the ever so beloved Chrono Burst so I can gain just enough CP to interrupt the boss's charge attack with an impede. While my build is essentially going to be seeing the same numbers as before, I did try a few more things out, like using a standard attack that was buffed and used with Laura's Brave Order to further give 80% damage increase, which netted over 35,000 damage on this guy. Doing the math and taking away the extra 80% to the initial value indicates that the buffed critical hit without this order active would have done around 20k, give or take. I accept that there will be a fair amount of variances since conditions of battle both with your own buffs and setups, as well as the exact defense of the given enemy, makes it to where flat damage comparisons are a bit tricky, but I would like to feel that these numbers give a solid ballpark estimate. I also tried out a buffed Phoenix Moon, which is her strongest non-S craft, and it hits about 55k, as well as a lot of break damage, so this is definitely something to keep in mind later to quickly reduce enemies to break state. I also noticed Rixia Mao is quite big. Not many of the standard enemies put up much of a fight on the rest of the stratum, which will be a running theme in a lot of these outside of the game's considerably strong enemies, and a few exceptions. The boss of this floor is this holy giant whale, which was pretty annoying to get down, even with this busted build. You're always able to dish out good damage, but the main bosses especially start to get so much health from this point forward that you need good defensive strategies on top of that to keep up, since wiping them out in just a few hits isn't feasible no matter how much steroids and Zerum powder you give everyone. I'm also playing on Nightmare difficulty sheerly to flex, so that certainly doesn't help the HP situation for either of us. Luckily, this thing really liked using attacks that were art-based, so Crescent Mirror spam was a hard counter to a lot of the fight, while I chipped away at its health. But even with some difficulty, it's no doubt that having a DPS like Rixia made this fight drag out far less than it could have. Now, like the real epic gamers we are, we proceed to make this build slightly worse by swapping out the Kyokatsu Quartz for a dazzling Goldia gem to further increase accuracy and crit rate. What is the point of this? I just explained. I probably shouldn't be so dumbfounded to these decisions and thought processes, as I recorded this only like a month ago at the time of writing this, but I think this was a decision made as I wanted to get more bonus accuracy in case of the blindness status effect that plagues a lot of these floors, but it still definitely isn't the most optimal, as spamming and attacking the stealth effect essentially mitigates all of the RNG I'm trying to offset. I believe this may have been before I really decided to commit and wanted to round her out with a bit better damage even without stealth. Regardless, I gear the rest of my team up for stronger magic damage output by bringing both Emma and Nadia, who both have pretty solid builds at this point, which is why the first hazard I came across on the 5th stratum after swapping my team is a mute field, exactly what I fucking wanted for Christmas. That said, with the other stronger damage characters paired alongside Rixia that can also take advantage of the enemy elemental weaknesses for more consistently high damage output, a lot of this floor goes by much faster than the last. Even Rixia Rixia herself gets a bit overshadowed at times, as nearly everything just crumbles to Emma and Nadia. Also, while this video isn't necessarily about builds outside of what I'm using on Rixia, I feel I do gotta give a shout out to Mercurius on Nadia, as this is a pretty excellent quartz to use on casters, with its boost to super effective elemental damage, and the master quartz granting access to low-level arts of every element. She would regularly hit about 40k damage with the weakest arts unbuffed for super effective hits, and that number would greatly increase with art strength buffs in Swin's art buff Link skill. Enemies do get a fair bit stronger throughout the later floors of the stratum, which is also felt as I continue to mess with my team, mainly to level up for trial doors, and thus use characters I don't really have the best setups on, but it's fine. Oh, and they put fucking Demon McBurn on the final floor, isn't that great? I first end up fighting Risha's longtime pal and blackmailer Sao Lee and some Heiwei goons as the Stratum's midpoint boss, which goes not quite as good as I hope. As with many multi-enemy bosses in Reverie, not wiping out every enemy immediately, nor putting up any sort of protection through shields or defensive brave orders, can get a lot of your characters destroyed in a matter of seconds, so keeping everyone alive was the biggest challenge in this fight. At least I got this convenient free crit turn that was able to pull Risha's first attack as an S-craft for some decent results. We still managed to scrape out a win, but we'll fix this fight later though. I forgot Demon McBurn's attacks aren't always art-based and can often hit right through any arts reflect shields you put up, and some have the chance to just insta-kill. Back to the drawing board, Death Blow, Protect, bring Emma for perfect reflect S-craft spam, easy victory. Ignore how fun it is when he cancels my buffs and debuffs me with some of the worst shit in the game. You can't make this shit up. They should have just killed you instantly at this rate. Before the next stratum, we do a bit of respecking in multiple characters, including Rixia, who we give prominent soul, one of the game's powerful lost arts that we are hardly going to use since we're building her as a physical strength character, and are just equipping for the beefy plus 500 strength increase, while also replacing Lunar Gyre with the dazzling Odin gem for further attack increase. Yes, rewatching me ignore this is bothering me immensely. When will this guy learn to play the game? I also managed to pull McBurn from the game's gacha system very conveniently after that boss, which I'm aware is just another nuclear warhead I've just unlocked, even without investing much into building him. This partnership will go far on the coming floors. Now, there's really not much I feel the need to detail on the 6th and 7th stratums, as it largely follows similar pattern of play as to what I've been outlining so far. Completely obliterate everything with crits, adapt defensively to any new boss gimmicks, rinse and repeat by and large with different teammates. Main thing to note is the inclusion of McBurn, who is largely a team mainstay for the rest of my runs, not just because this guy is a total beast on his own, but because of how surprisingly good his synergy with Rixia is. This is both thanks to the fact that both these characters have naturally very high attack power at this point in the game, and can easily deal finishers for ludicrous damage, and because McBurn's Brave Order raises crit rate to 100% while it's active, meaning that you don't even need stealth for Rixia to deal guaranteed crit damage in this state. I do get a fight with a shadow clone version of Rixy and Ilya about halfway through the 7th stratum, to where I have to deal with the same moves I've been using the entire time, but turns out the fake just got the dollar store version of Moonlight Butterflies, as she doesn't even get stat buffs when she goes into stealth mode. How unfortunate. So by the time I complete the 8th stratum, and by extension the post-game, my Rixia build is essentially complete. Rixia now has her maximum upgraded Zemirian ore weapon in Longji's Downpour, and I replaced the True Awakening headband accessory with a much more beneficial Goldian watch for more attack power. Her orbment setup also received some of its final tweaks, finally getting rid of one of those Goldia quartz, though keeping keeping a dazzling Goldia gem for some accuracy. The other notable change I made were upgrading domination to true domination, so Risha's first attack goes from getting 100% bonus damage to 150% bonus damage. In the end, Risha is just shy of 6,000 strength. Even boosting the enemies in the final stratum by 50 additional levels doesn't prevent them from crumbling under this build's max strength. I also decided to test out how Risha would do wielding the stack of both Kusanagi and Gungnir as a way to maybe stack the 2 crit damage bonuses provided by each, and maybe I was doing something wrong in my testing, but I seemed to get similar performance to my Murakumo Gungnir combo build, so I decided to stick with that for these last few challenges, as the starting stealth is quite convenient for early setup, and I will be refighting a few previous bosses at a higher level and see just how well this build shakes up, even against enemies of a significantly higher level. Feel free to skip the next section if you don't necessarily care about the specifics of a few of these fights and the play-by-play kind of unscripted commentary, but watch the end though, it's very important, trust me. Alright, first fight, figured it was appropriate to get some revenge on Sao Lee. Now, I did buff him by 50 levels like I am doing with basically every other enemy in this run, so I think he's going to be around 230 at this point, and my team is mainly going to be 200, so if you know that if it's doing good damage, it's good shit, but anyways, you can see I casted, I realized my mistake from last time, and I casted a good S-Craft, and since it was a 200%, and it was free, because I got really lucky with that free craft, that is 2 free max guards for basically everyone, but I did even have a backup plan for that, and as you can see, that's kind of Fee sitting out in the middle. I'm hoping everyone ends up just kind of targeting her the whole fight. And as you can see, I'm struggling kind of to make my next move, because I guess I did forget to max everyone's S craft or their CP gauge at the tree, because I know Risha is not max like everyone else seems to be. But, as you'll see, this is not really a problem in this fight. So here we go, pulling Vita. I think the only reason I brought Vita for this was because of her, Brave Order, which I am going to use here in just a moment, because it's like Laura's, but it gives 100% instead of 80% bonus damage, so that's, I believe, the best individual damage boosting order in the game, if we're not counting Mick Burns strictly for crits. Okay, so as you can see, I used the Zerum powder strictly for the full S gauge, and here we got a full buff S-Craft. Not at 200, unfortunately, but I mean this will do pretty well, I would say. There we go, funny Pookie flip. And that's a good 400k on literally everybody, so I mean, it's gonna take them to their buff state, their sicko mode, but really that's not a concern. As you saw, we did a pretty good buff, so their S-Crafts are basically just gonna go to waste, because well, I mean, we killed both the goons, so it's not like they're gonna be able to land more hits, and nobody's even able to hit Fee anyway, so really it doesn't matter. It was just kind of extra protection, because I think you saw earlier she did get hit once. I can't recall exactly how much evasion she has at the moment, and I am also running the Rage Quartz, which is a guaranteed crit for every counter attack, so that synergizes pretty well with the Fee build, but I believe her evasion's in the ballpark of like 80 to 90%. I know I probably could have done more, but it's good enough, as you can very well see. But anyway, the rest of this fight, I believe, is just us trying to knock them down, because they're buff state is negating a lot of damage, so the best thing to do is to break them, just so you could do more. So that's what I'm trying to do. Heavy attack, heavy break damage attacks, and that's, I think I'm about to, again, this is kind of very on the spot. I'm trying to remember exactly what I do, but I do see that juicy crit with Lost Genesis, and the fact that she hits hard regardless, and now there's Xiao down. And that's like half of his remaining health, and one basic attack from Rixia. So not bad, we'll say. And as you can see, they're both, like, almost dead. I don't think we took any damage thus far. Yeah, because we've had the shields up the whole time. Haven't swapped anyone out yet. And I mean, there really wouldn't be a point to, because it'll just be throwing away the free shields. And I have a full S-Craft for Emma still stored in there in case something were to hypothetically go wrong, which you will very much see does not happen at all. That was like practically overkill, but we do get a bonus, and yeah, the fucking Emma kills him like instantly, so that was a 5-minute fight with a souped up boss, max XP. Really couldn't have gone any better, I gotta say. Now here we have another fight with just kind of a random enemy. I wasn't really planning on this, except I was just kind of randomly going through some of the floors. And this one did turn out kind of funny, as you see literally right now. We already got a delay on him, and I think I check his delay percentage later in the fight. Oh yeah, and the free break. That's always very good to get. Yeah, we're curing the stupid fire floor. That makes things a little more convenient, but I didn't get a delay there, but I can't remember exactly what I've equipped on Fee that gives her a chance to delay, but this boss has like I want to say 50% resilience to it, which is pretty low as far as bosses are concerned, since most of them have like 20% or lower. That is like a 20% chance to get delayed, whereas this guy's way up to like 50, I want to say. And this very unintentionally shakes out in a way where this guy hardly gets any chances to move. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. 40%, excuse me. But that's still pretty high. It's still about double what you'll see on most bosses. As you see, we're not doing really, like, great damage. As I said, this was kind of like... well, we got the delay again, so that's funny. Resisted at that time, but... I'm still kind of in, like, disbelief about how often he got delayed. So I think that's why I checked again, but... anyways, I was saying, I didn't really intend for this to be, like, a cool damage setup, so I'm kind of just whacking him, I guess. We're still doing pretty decent damage. We're still getting like 50k for like one Rixia attack. Even Rufus is doing pretty good. I mean, after he got that buff. And Rixia dies. That's sort of embarrassing for an endgame, but I suppose this guy needed to get some win in his life before he got further delayed to death. Not including right now. I guess he resisted again, but I remember later in this fight, he also kind of falls in another trap of not. So obviously this is more of like a feast showcase. But we are bringing Rixia back. Another delay, of course.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, getting that crit in. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, it does count as art damage. Vita's S-Craft. I mean, it doesn't do amazing compared to some of her other attacks, but, you know, it's still a crit, not terrible. And if you want a comparison, that did like 40k, and Risha's normal attack did like 50k. Another delay, of course. And we're kind of out of CP, so little, yeah, it's not a good 9,000 damage unbuffed. That's not really what we're looking for. Can't remember what I do Chrono Burst for. I don't know if it's for... Oh, yeah, okay. This is why McBurn's Brave Order is kind of insane. And that was free, too, so it kind of negated the fact that it cost 8 BP. But no, there we go. She's now at 100. So now she will actually be doing her real damage. And really, we haven't done anything super... We haven't dropped like an actual nuke where we really set up until now. And he's already like well over half health, but I think we've just been kind of whittling him down the whole fight. So that's 100k for just one of her normal crafts, as you could see. Pretty good. Rufus S craft, that does pretty well too. Get 85, not bad, not bad. And he's already, like, almost dead, so... I think this is what finishes him off, or at least this follow-up will. Actually, yep, there we go. She gets the finishing blow, and then that's... this guy just dead. Just like that, even though he's technically a super boss. Anyway, good shit. Now here we got the last fight, and what more fitting for a grand finale than to face yourself. Here we got the Rixia Ilya duo, which went alright earlier, but this is one I feel like I can nuke a little better on, and as you can see, we kind of look at the... and this is the same, mostly the same team I have. Admittedly, though... not everyone's going to be really doing much, as I don't think I used Claire or a lot of people in backup, to be honest. We still got our usual suspects. Rixia aside, we do got Rufus, Vita, and Emma. Doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and I think I do bring McBurn in later. So again, very, very usual suspects. But I don't know if the others really see any action, so... I can't remember exactly what I'm trying to set up at the beginning here.
Thank you so much.
I don't know if I'm trying to... yeah, I'm okay. I'm trying to maximize for a 200%... a 200 CP fully charged... S-Craft, and that's how we're going to be dealing our first hit to do the maximum damage, ideally, and we're playing it all in its full glory, just so you could watch her do the funny little flip again, and for dramatic effect, I guess.
Very well.
So let's see how much this does. Yeah, 45,000, I think, and it was like 47,000 on the Rixia. So a little different, probably because of the defenses and whatnot, but that's still like kind of crazy. But based on where they are, you can see that's not even like half of their health. They're just that beefy. So I don't know why we're giving a... I don't actually know why I did Renegade Edge there. I think we're trying to break them. Oh, yeah, I see. Okay, I see. Their break meter's kind of low. And we'll be using Rufus's S-Craft, because that's really good for breaking. One of the best S-Crafts as far as pure break damage is concerned. So either this will break them, or Vita's attack will, and that breaks them perfectly. Okay, so we'll still be doing quite a lot of damage. This is a weakness of theirs. The space art And as you can see, we still got the 100% damage dealing buff. So that's gonna hurt, needless to say. See, not even a crit from her, and that still does about 100 grand. And here we go. This is like the one time I've also realized in one of these kind of showcase fights that I've actually been using Unite Front. I don't know if just hadn't had a need to use it much before, since it really isn't fitting for the build, but as you can see, McBurn's coming in here. So clearly things are going to go south for them. Not sure why I do Abyssal Hounds, because that's more break-oriented. Don't get any crits, unfortunately, but it's still decent, And then here we go, buff phase. Only thing about McBurn being swapped out is that he will be vulnerable to an S-craft. And looks like Rufus's shield's also completely gone. And here we got some Emma thinking. That's right, I do have the very good upgrade that I didn't get till like very, very late, because you had to do one of the trial doors for it, but free magic reflect for Emma is pretty good, and I'm pretty sure Ilya's S-craft is considered magic damage. So I think that's what we're doing right here. And I realized I completely lied before. Claire gets one thing, and it's this one Brave Order for very crazy plus 400% break damage, though it costs 5 BP and lasts 1 turn, so it's a little limited in its use. But as I'm starting to see now, we're really not seeming to have to worry about any S-craft, at least until this Ilya comes back. And come on, McBurn, you fucking missed that. You have no excuse. This S-craft's not gonna miss, though, so that's gonna... Don't mind me just being mesmerized by the crimson flames. Very good S-craft. You can see does pretty decent amount, and keeping in mind how tanky these guys are from that one Rixia attack that we saw made other bosses crumble. Not doing bad. We got the McBurn debuff, so that did a lot. Unfortunately, couldn't stop that Rixia from healing, because I didn't have any S-crafts ready to interrupt that turn from her. But it really ultimately doesn't matter, because that McBurn debuff basically canceled out any of the health she got back. And here we go. We're kind of just playing around with very average damage on her. That's the one weakness I did say about the Rixia build, is the moment she has no crit, damage is very, very mediocre. But they're so low at this point that it really doesn't matter. So you could see McBurn can basically finish this off, and I believe that's what happens right here. Yep, the classic McBurn Rixia combo. Shadow clone defeated, shadow figure detected, gone, GG's. Anyways, that's going to do it for the video. I know this may have not been anything too new or mind-blowing, since I know people aren't strangers to breaking Trails games combat in half, but I never really saw a Rixia build video on Reverie, and kinda just wanted to make this out of the sheer fun I was having for Reverie's post-game, and just wanted to flex some funny high damage numbers. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the DPS porn, and might have learned a new way to crack the game in half. Also, I hate to drop a controversial opinion so late into the video, but I do in fact think Rixia is pretty hot, especially if she were fatter.